What's up guys, it's Oliver here from 99 Garage, and as you may be able to see in the background, we got the G37 up on jack stands. The other day on my way to work, the clutch started slipping, so I hit up the boys from Ypipe Racing and they got me hooked up with a really nice clutch assembly. Let's see what we got. So here we got the Spec Stage 2 clutch setup. Came with the clutch, pressure plate, and a lightweight billet flywheel. At the same time, I went ahead and picked up the Jim Wolf Tech heavy duty slave cylinder, all the bearings and seals we may need, and a GK Tech stainless steel clutch line. All right, so let's get to it. First thing we need to do is we need to get under that car and remove that white pipe. Alright, so we got the white pipe out. Looks like next step's going to be removing a brace for the trans tunnel. Alright, so now we've got it out. I want to apologize. Earlier I mentioned that this was the trans brace, and while yes it is, it does brace it to the chassis, it's also the trans mount. The mount sits inside of that little pocket there. I'm learning with you guys. It's the first time I've done a clutch install on the G, but there is one trick I want to mention. When removing this brace, it has 4 bolts on the outside and 2 nuts in the center. Be sure to remove those 2 nuts in the center before removing the bolts on the outside. If you remove the bolts on the outside first, all of the torque that you need to loosen the nuts on the inside will be transferred to the soft rubber bushing. It becomes nearly impossible to remove them, and I actually stripped one of them in the process. So next step's going to be removing the drive shaft. Now in order to remove the drive shaft, we first need to begin by removing this brace here. Once that brace is removed, we need to remove the heat shield above it, as well as the heat shield back here. Alright, so before removing the drive shaft, it appears that removing the shifter may make the process easier. There are tons of videos out there on how to do this, so I'm going to leave it out, but it's as simple as removing a couple bolts on top and bottom. So we got the drive shaft out. Now we've got everything out of the car. The only thing left is to remove the bell housing bolts and pull the trans. Unfortunately, the weather doesn't seem to be cooperating. So we're going to clean it all up and we'll see you all in the morning. Good morning everyone. It's the next day, and as you can see, the G is now in the garage. After we started cleaning up everything and I put the camera down last night, the window regulator failed. So window got stuck down and we had to trade places with the 13. So let's get the G out of the garage, back up on jack stands, and get this trans out. Alright, so as you can see, we got the trans out of the car. We've already started assembling the Jim Wolf Tech slave cylinder. After that's finished, we'll go ahead and throw in the new GK Tech stainless steel clutch line, and then start assembling the clutch. Well, that's a good example of what not to do. When putting in that pilot bushing, it happened to crack on us, so we had to run and get a new one, but it's all good. We got the other one in and should be good to go. So one thing it's important to note is Spec clutches are balanced and they have a yellow mark. So when installing them, be sure to line those marks back up. So from the last you saw, the clutch is being installed, but now we got the car on the ground. So obviously some time has passed. I had to put the camera down and get to work, but everything's done now. So I want to give a big shout out to the guys at Njuku for helping me out and getting me this clutch assembly. But now we're gonna go on a test drive. Here we are back in the car. We're about ready to start, but I want to give you a quick recap. So we had the Spec clutch, Spec flywheel, Spec pressure plate, Jim Wolf slave cylinder, and GK Tech stainless steel clutch lines. After changing out the trans fluid and bleeding the slave cylinder, we're ready to go. So let's start her up. After rolling through the gears a little bit, the clutch feels great. The engagement point is just above the center, and it's very, very drivable. A lot of people get nervous when upgrading their clutch because they're afraid that it's going to introduce chatter or it's going to be harder to drive. With the Spec Stage 2, you don't have to worry about any of that. The car feels super smooth, the clutch is super easy to engage, and overall, it's just a great driving experience. One of the biggest gripes I had about this car previously was that the engagement point on the stock clutch was just so high on the pedal. Like I mentioned earlier, the Spec Stage 2, the engagement point is just above the center, so it feels great. An important piece to note is that Spec recommends a 500-mile break-in period on all of their clutches. Very similar to where if you were to change your brake pads, you have to bed your brake pads to the rotor. When you do a clutch change, you have to bed that clutch to the flywheel. So for the first 500 miles, Spec recommends that you keep it easy on the clutch. So we're back here in the office and the drive went great. I can't recommend Spec clutch more. Depending on your power level, you might need a higher stage clutch. If you're making 500, 600 or more, you may want to look into a stage 3, stage 4, or maybe even a stage 5 clutch. Spec lists the power and torque limits of every clutch on their website. Overall, the experience was great though, and if you're in the market for a clutch, pick up a Spec. As always, keep it 99, and I'll see you in the next one.